do we have a roadmap for 1.0? Like, what else is there before we get to something that we want to call 1.0? And what does 1.0 mean? Isaac. No, I'm kidding.
Well, so is this working?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, it's the crazy speakers. It has to be more stable. It has to feel really good, and there needs to be some better debugging. And there's just some things that you just don't really. I mean, what's 1.0? There's all this discussion about SemVar and whatever. SemVar is bullshit. I mean, you just version stuff however you want to version it, and I will version it however I want to version it, and it will be 1.0 when I want it to be. But it's somehow has to feel better than it is right now. And so there's not a totally laid out roadmap for 1.0 because it's in the distant future. We'll focus on 0.6, reworking the plumbing, and then revisit that question later.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to? No, that's it.
All right. All right. What class of problems is Node not good at now and won't be good at in the future? In other words, like even once we fix all of these bugs that we have and all these other issues, what is Node never really going to be good at?
So we've run into this a bunch.
Closer.
Oh, is anybody going? Okay. It's like, I think that Node is good for a lot of things, but if you find yourself writing a server and having to deal with back pressure for things that, if you find yourself writing like a mini server and dealing with all kinds of complicated flow control and sort of, you know, back pressure and coordination when like what you really want to do is like a bulk operation, like read something from a file and write it all into a database just as fast as that will go. Like, in order to do that in Node, like you have to do like all of this asynchronous stuff, and like you're literally writing a server, and like, it's kind of not very good, and I bet you it won't ever be very good. But like, I don't know, I do it in Node anyway, just because I do everything in I just do everything in Node. But I don't know, if you find yourself writing a mini server, like if it would be easier for you to do that in something else, like maybe you should do that in something else, like, you know, Python or Bash, or, you know, a bunch of, you know, bash up a bunch of curls together that do some database insert. Anyway, mini servers that don't feel right probably aren't right.
Databases. Should not write databases in Node. I told you personally as well. I mean, JavaScript doesn't have proper math yet. Anything that really relies on that probably don't want to write big crypto stuff, Diffie-Hellman algorithms.
I was going to say databases. Yeah, I mean, the number of things is actually pretty big. Because like we were working on a Cassandra client, and we needed 64-bit integers. And, well, that's not easy in JavaScript. I mean, you can do it, but you're working around a lot of things in JavaScript to have big integers. So anything that's, you know, low level, especially like disk I/O bound things. If you're doing a lot of disk I/O, you probably don't want to use Node. You want to use C if you're, you know, because even like a database server, you know, good database servers are written in C, so you don't have garbage collection, all kinds of other things that can pause the world and make a random query take, you know, 200 milliseconds instead of 10 milliseconds. And you want that consistency that you only get from C.
Okay. So Ryan, it's no secret that you're a C guy. And you've had some not so kind words about JavaScript, especially early on in Node. How do you feel about JavaScript now that you've had more time with it?
It fits very well to the purpose of this.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
All right. That's a quote on Twitter, right?
Yeah,
about JavaScript. It's pretty good.
I wish ECMAScript would, like, we were just talking about 64-bit integers. I mean, seriously, like, I wish ECMAScript wouldn't be so fancy pants about like adding all these features and stuff. Like,
we need rest params. We need numbers.
Yeah, we need 64-bit integers. Please do that first. then think about proxies in like 10 years after we're all dead. Like,
Yeah.
we.
Yeah.
JavaScript does not need more features. It just needs a couple of small things fixed.
A list of things that I've never heard anybody say I couldn't write my application because I didn't have are classes, proxies, and yeah, exactly. But we've hit all problems all the time where we can't write an application because we don't have proper numbers, or we can't write an application well because we don't have proper binary support. And these things are kind of like backburnered right now, or going to be in a future version of the language that breaks compatibility. And they really could go in now without breaking compatibility. All right, moving on. Why are C++ API calls so expensive?
I don't know. That's V8's problem.
Alex Russell, can you please come to the panel?
It's because they can't like totally. Oh, yes.
All right, invite Alex up, everybody. And he's wearing a haters gonna hate t-shirt after our last answer. That's just perfect.
Cross-language serialization always sucks, and any thing that you're going to be passing back and forth between JavaScript and C++ is going to have to be marshaled in some way. So when I take a number or a string, for instance, and I pass it into V8, the internal representation of those things is not like, oh yeah, it's a number, so it's going to be automatically allocated the same way all the time. There's a lot of sort of sophistication inside of V8 to make sure that for most of the common use cases, the heap stays small because GC requires us to compact the heap. It requires us to spend a lot of time going over these objects in memory, and we don't want to do a lot more of that than we absolutely have to. So the short answer is the types that you're talking about actually do have some conversion, and so there is some funking that's going to happen with what you're passing back and forth.
In a web browser, I mean, whenever your web browser, your JavaScript is talking to a DOM object or doing any kind of stuff with the DOM object, I mean, it sucks in about the same way, right?
Yeah, so DOM is a great analogy here. So the DOM bindings for V8 to WebKit, for instance, have a whole lot of magic, specifically around strings, because strings are the thing that you wind up spending a lot of time on in DOM, right? Their attributes, their tag names, they're a lot of the values that you're going to be passing back and forth. There is a shared pool of particular strings that get what we call interned. And then there's this dance that happens, this complicated dance about who owns the memory or who gets to put it in that particular interned area. And so what happens is your application use case sort of winds up evolving these sorts of holes in the APIs on both sides to accommodate better performance. And I think that's probably like, the short to midterm answer for this as well.
Okay. I'm actually going to do this one exactly as it says it. I know they're not interesting, but don't we need more frameworks in Node?
Maybe. I don't know. If we do, someone should make them. Make them. If there is a framework that needs to be made, like maybe there is, who knows? We'll never know until we try.
Go make more frameworks, everybody.
Well, so I'll actually answer that and make this broader. Like anyone who says you shouldn't have written that module because someone else already wrote it is just absolutely wrong. Like this has been around for 2 years. Nobody's solved the problem perfectly yet. That just hasn't happened. So anyone who's saying that we need less diversity is absolutely wrong. Like we're far too immature right now. Yeah, I mean, well, package managers are really fucking hard, man. Like, if you want to try to write a better one, you should totally do that, though. And, I won't use it.
It's actually not that hard.
How many lines of code is NPM?
A couple thousand.
Okay.
Was that a question?
From the thing, yeah.
No, okay. I think, Marco, I think that mailing list issue that you're referring to, there kind of was this time where there was, I say this in the past tense as if it's not still happening, but there was this time where there was like a ton of people coming into Node and writing their first Node program, and their first Node program was a server framework to stack middleware for mythical applications that nobody was writing. So that was a little bit silly, you're right? And so there kind of was this moment where it was like, hey, why don't we all just write the same kind of, use the same middleware layer at least for all of these web application frameworky things that we're building? And then it turns out that, you know what, Express is actually the best one of those, and so we all just started using that.
Yeah, I think they were saying let's use a middleware framework, but that's Connect, right? And
yeah, and then nobody else
Connect
used
kind of
Connect.
sucks. I mean, like, let's just say it.
Connect sort of became the middleware framework for Express.
I mean, Tim, Connect kind of sucks, right?
No,
very non-committal.
I think it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, it's like JavaScript.
So I think that if you're going to go write a framework or a package or whatever, I mean, you have to strike a balance between I mean, by all means, just go write it. Like, have fun. Go write whatever you want. Like, writing programs is cool. Like it's a really fun way to learn about stuff. But like, if you start promoting it and saying like, hey, you should use this thing, like, I think that's where you have to have a little bit of, I don't know if restraint's the right word, but like, it's a responsibility. If you're gonna sort of promote something that you made and say, no, use this, like, you have to be willing to support it. You have to be, like, don't just make a framework and say, go use this. This thing is really great, and like, here's why it's so great, if you're not prepared to support it.
The other thing too is that we're still building a lot of primitives in Node that will be the basis for a lot of these frameworks going forward, and they're still changing. Like, we're arguing about streams like nonstop. It's like still dominating a lot of our conversation. And like, all of these frameworks and middlewares are gonna need to be built on streams at some point in time. So, I mean, diversity right now is a really great thing. It's giving us a lot of ideas about API and what we need to provide inside of streams. And we shouldn't start consolidating yet, no matter how good something is. Except my libraries. No, I'm kidding. You should all really go and build more HTTP clients, for real. We don't need more HTTP clients. All right. What's your favorite thing done in Node so far? I'm going to ask that to everybody on the panel right now, and then I'm going to invite other people up to answer it. So everyone has to do this one.
Socket.io.
I also say Socket.io. And Express and PM. Like, it's truly a joy to sit down and use these things, which I don't get to do so often. And I mean, they are working fairly well.
This community, I mean, the fact that this community is here is, it's not done in Node specifically, but it's kind of a cop-out answer. But the fact that JavaScript finally escaped the client and is on the server, you guys rule. Thank you. Nicely done.
What they said, and also the dnode rap battle, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, boy, I don't know. Yeah, already chosen, all really good ones. I mean, I guess my favorite thing about Node is how easy it is to sort of I don't know, to just find out what's going on and get problems solved. Like with Node itself, or with the packages, the packages people put out for Node, being able to get in touch with the people who make them, it's the time that it takes to sort of get support on a lot of this stuff is impossibly low. It's super cool.
Yeah, I'd actually also say the community. The community is amazing, and we get to take GitHub way for granted. You don't get to do that in a lot of other projects, and it's really awesome. Tim, why don't you come up here and answer as well? I'm going to swap you. Yeah. You need to come to the front. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same question.
Hoping I got out of it. My favorite thing about Node is just the empowerment it gives programmers. Not any particular project. I guess the ones on Node Knockout are cool because it's people just make something in such a short time, so there's a lot of creativity in it.
All right, so Felix is going to do it. Now we're going to have Felix come up Yeah, swap out. That's right.
We didn't have enough chairs. So,
Well, it's more we didn't have a stage. But I'm particularly interested in what Felix has to say because Felix has probably been working on and with Node longer than anybody that I know but Ryan. So I'm particularly interested in what you have to say.
Streams is probably my favorite part of Node, especially now with the new pipe APIs and the mega pipes and not T pipes, those are terrible. What we can do is pretty amazing. For example, taking a file upload and putting it into a process in real time and doing stuff on that, it would be really difficult on any other stacks, and we can do that with Node now. Also, browserify is just amazing. The first time I tried that out, it blew my mind. It's awesome.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else close that works on core that I could ask, so I think we're done with that question. Okay, one last one from the list, and then I think that we're out of them. There are certain states that you can put Node into. For instance, when you block on processing, you'll see certain weird spikes. When you hit certain GC conditions, you see really, really bad spikes. It always looks like Node is either doing really, really well or extremely poorly. And debugging that isn't always simple. What is anybody doing right now to try and improve that?
I think that's on the roadmap for 1.0.
Okay, so
No, I mean, that's kind of part of it, right? I mean, some of these things are hard, and it kind of feels like crap sometimes.
All right, now I guess we're going to open it up to audience questions, which somebody athletic is going to need to run the mic to them, and then back. Oh, yeah, okay, we have another mic. All right. So raise your hand if you have a question for the panel, and Tom will go run over to you. This man over here is probably going to bitch about me making fun of Connect.
So I was kind of interested in how, Ryan, when you talked about how in future versions of Node, there will be a built-in mechanism for doing inter-process communication with like other nodes, right? So this has been on the footer of the Node website forever, is that it's going to use the web worker API. And so I didn't know if, like, first, is that still the plan, like use something like web workers? Or, because I'm doing this right now a lot, and I would love to see a standard so we could stop fighting over which thing to use for forking things and doing long-running processes and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm still playing around with this a lot, and I don't know. It seems like, you know, some of the stuff that Charlie Robbins and Paul are doing are kind of approaching this sort of multiple dealing with multiple processes system. I don't like the web worker API in a huge amount, and I don't think there's really a ton of benefit of sharing that API with the web browser. But I mean, something similar. We definitely need an API for starting a child process that is specifically a Node child process. And I mean, it's almost trivial to write that API so that you can have a channel that you speak to it with and have some sort of protocol, right? Some whatever line delimited JSON or something. Because I think well, one of the problems is that in Windows we may end up going with this thread model for having child node processes as opposed to real processes, and we might keep real processes on Unix. So you know, that would be having that API would be a good way to abstract that problem. Yeah, so I definitely want to add, like, start a sub node process with some channel to send messages like as soon as possible. I will be taking patches for that.
All right, anybody else? Who's up next? I know that you have questions. Don't be wusses.
Since we're low on questions, it's just one idea I had.
Speak up a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Is there any way right now to determine when a call goes asynchronous? Specifically, like, I know that we have convention. I know that there's callbacks, errors, and all that stuff. So is there any way to like determine like, hey, that call that I just made, it did something asynchronously. It's not just returning immediately.
So then it sounds like your question is there some way I call a function? Is there some way for me, the caller of that function, to know that something async is now happening as a result?
Yes.
That's your question?
Yes.
Currently, no. I don't think so. Am I wrong? Oh, wait. I was sorry. Okay. Ryan was distracted. So you call a function, right? You do like fs.write. And now something async is happening.
No.
How do I know as the caller?
No, well. Yeah. So I think I can actually answer this question because I've tried to deal with it. One thing that Node does that's really great is that when there's nothing left in the event system, it just exits. And basically what you want to do is be able to do that on a micro level, right? Be able to say like, I'm going to run some code now or a function now, and like I need to know when everything that ever descended from that, all the callbacks that it did, is basically over. You want to be able to peer into that a little bit.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, specifically the use cases, writing, and I know everybody hates these, but I was just doing it, so for the fun of it. But writing libraries that help you with control flow. Determining when you're making an asynchronous call or a completely synchronous call is more or less impossible, so you kind of just do these things and attack conventions to
you always pass a callback is what happens.
Yeah. But I was just wondering if there was a way to determine that, and if not, if you guys ever thought about it.
Not at the moment.
Well, I mean, like all of these things are backed by libev watchers, and there is like inside of libev a list of pending watchers, and I think having some JavaScript iterator that we could walk over those guys and see how many are pending. As long as these guys are pending, like that's what prevents Node from dropping out. It means something asynchronous is going to happen.
Right, but we only care about the ones that are the result of a particular call that we did.
That would be hard to,
so I sent a proposal to the list for hooks into the event system that would allow you to do this.
You could count them and then count them again.
Yeah. I mean, the presumption, so in order to do this, first we have to do the event source work, right? I mean, they're kind of connected.
Well, I think we need to expose an iterator for libev watchers, which
the problem is that if those callbacks have descendant callbacks, then we don't have any way to hook in before and after them in order to then iterate over their descendant callbacks.
I mean, you wouldn't have a hook into the JavaScript objects. You would only be able to tell of the existence of something asynchronous happening.
Okay.
At least how I'm imagining this.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's an interesting question. Like,
Closer.
It gets to kind of a fundamental, like, philosophical, like, just the model of writing a Node program. And a thing that you have to do that you might not have to do in other systems is to limit the concurrency. And how can you sort of manage this concurrency explosion that can happen? Because everything that is interesting, it happens asynchronously. You can fire off as many requests, more requests than you even should be allowed to fire off. They'll all go into some queue right away, and then that blows up the heap, and you allocate a bunch of kernel resources, and then that's generally what makes your Node program go from working really well to like working just really badly, and things lock up and it gets all weird. It's you just spawned a whole ton of async things. There are various queues and resources allocated for those async things, and then Node and VA just grind to a halt. Like managing that concurrency and the back pressure is really the unique challenge of writing Node programs. And we could probably make it better with some hooks, iterating over the libev, internals. But it's a pretty unique challenge. I mean, the solution is sort of uniquely different depending on what you're trying to do and like what it means to have back pressure from certain resources or to limit the concurrency from certain others. Like, I've thought about this a lot because we have this problem, and it's a tough one. You can try to keep track of it manually, and that's kind of what I try to do, is keep track of the concurrency manually when I make something that I'm sure is async, and try to put limits on it. But it's a real challenge, and part of what makes node programming hard. I think maybe some better patterns will emerge over time as we all get better at this, but it's kind of tricky right now.
So, you first, sir? What?
Okay. Doesn't long stack traces by Tom Robertson already nearly do this? That last question?
I heard that it was long stack traces.
Doesn't long stack traces already nearly do this? Was that what you said?
Yeah.
When there are exceptions.
No, long stack traces would only help you debug when something blows up terribly, which is important.
It keeps track of what has created what events. So you could add, it could emit event.
One could imagine that similar hooks that enable long stack traces also enable solving that other problem. But there's work to be done.
Okay. Now we're going to get Alex. We've got a mic coming, or whoever's faster. I just like to see Tom run.
It's like Baywatch, jeez.
I have a potentially impertinent question.
Okay, a little closer though.
Sorry, I have a potentially impertinent question. So I absolutely love what you guys have done. So I worked on server-side JavaScript, way before there was V8, way before there was Node, and Node is taking it really big, taking it to everybody, and this is, this room is testament to the fact that this is like the breakout moment for this community. And so I've seen a lot of other communities kind of eat themselves over like long-form discussions about eventual ownership of the soft forms of control. And so I was really happy to see that Node has a really sophisticated CLA policy and a great sort of licensing policy. And so like the last form of control that's left after copyright and patent, which are already taken care of, is trademark. And so I was sort of curious what I read the trademark policy, and I was really curious to know sort of like, is there going to be some conservancy, or is there going to be some organization that's going to sort of shepherd that out in the future?
No, I think Joyent's going to keep shepherding this and pushing it forward. I mean, possibly in the future, but it is a very liberally licensed software, and so I think we're fairly protected from any sort of, I think there's some concerns about acquisitions or whatnot, doomsday sort of scenarios. But I mean, in the end, the software is very, very open source, and so hopefully that will prevent any sort of problems.
It's not licensed by Sun under some weird Sun license.
So I think I'm just going to, we talked a lot at Joint about the trademark policy, and there have been a few things floating around on Twitter, and I think I'd rather just address it and kind of, it's the elephant in the room a little bit, so here goes. When you start talking about something like that, obviously there are lawyers involved, and as soon as lawyers are involved, we as a company, as an organization, have the immense risk of looking like a big bunch of jerks. And that's tough for us. I mean, obviously Node is Ryan's baby, and Isaac and I have put a considerable amount of our own personal time into it, and we care about it, and we've all been working on open source for a very long time. So I think we see the other side of it, but what I really hope that people will see is that we're doing this because there's a potential problem for any community in the future where somebody can misappropriate a name, somebody can misrepresent themselves as being part of our community. Everybody at NodeConf has put something into Node. Everybody at NodeConf has committed their time, their resources, their companies, all sorts of things to Node, and that's important, that's special, that needs to be protected, but in order to protect it, we have to do stuff with lawyers that looks scary and is kind of, can make it easy for people to look at us and go, oh, you guys are the bad guys. And we talked about this a lot, and we took the difficult decision to say, well, we'd rather appear to be the bad guys, the people that don't want to look too close, and have the ability to protect Node from, a threat that may never happen in the future. And that was a decision that we took. But I really hope, and if anybody has any specific things where we've not enabled them to do something that they want to do because of a policy, I really hope that we've dealt with all of those things. And I really hope that we've provided a forum for people to give us specific advice. We took our trademark policy mainly from Apache, and in many ways our policy is actually more liberal than Apache. We added clauses to make it possible for open source to use the trademark in a way which isn't possible with Apache. And that was important to us because we think that all of the things that people are contributing are important, and we wanted to facilitate that. So if you have concerns about the trademark, come and talk to me. We still have the party. We can do it over drinks if that makes you more comfortable, but,
It will.
We are doing this for you. We're doing this not because, we're trying to kind of score one. We're doing it because we want to make sure that somebody's there to protect this community from people misrepresenting things that aren't Node as Node and taking credit for your work and having things that are bad that aren't Node and calling it Node.
I'm going to make Brendan ask a question.
I don't have a question. I don't want to be one of what Chris Heilman calls a clever Trevor who stands up and filibusters from the floor.
No, we just had this little Twitter back and forth, so just talk about that and then
Yeah,
we'll
go
address
see Twitter. Something happened when I was in the other room that I think was ignorant. The JavaScript standards body does not do one thing and then wait 10 years to do what you regard as unnecessary fancy pants stuff. It does many things at once, and it takes years to write the spec and get it through ISO. But that doesn't mean the implementations can't show up sooner. Binary data is going to show up really soon in SpiderMonkey. There's no reason, technically, it couldn't show up in V8. And that spec is pretty solid. So there. It's not on the back burner. It's not on the back burner. Now, there's a problem with 64-bit ints. I'm a C hacker. I like 64-bit ints. Architectures need them. Try wedging them into JavaScript in a way that has sane dynamic conversion rules with IEEE double and doesn't melt everybody's brains, including all the code out there on the web that depends on doubles being imprecise when you get big enough. You could add type annotations. We tried that in ES4. It's not going to happen. Binary data has 64-bit ints, I believe, or it should. It has 32-bit ints. It has 16-bit ints. It has 8-bit ints. Has different size floats.
Well, so for the number thing, a few people have been working on it, and what they've essentially implemented is a new number object that you instantiate that you can mostly treat like a number, but as a separate object.
And you have to call methods
really well without breaking syntax, right?
But you have to call methods on it, right?
No, I mean it's implemented in C.
Oh, but how do you do addition in JavaScript with 64-bit numbers?
How do you number 1 plus number 2?
Right.
I mean, if they're both bigger than a JavaScript number object, just using value of is not going to work, right?
Plus is going to lower them to IEEE double, and am I in charge now?
We've scared him away, I think.
And you got it. There's a funny blog post from Cameron Purdy about somebody using Java big decimal, and they wrote a bunch of code, and it was a pain to write because you have to call methods. They ended up putting plus in the middle and calling double value for each of the decimals. They were instantly losing precision. They were like losing the profit of the bank they were working for. It's not easy to wedge 64 bits in.
If you need big ints right now, you can use Substack's big int thing, and it's a compiled module, and you have to call methods on it. You get a big int object.
So do that.
It kind of works.
We're working on it.
It's okay. He's struggling. There are workarounds, but it'd be better if the language just supported it, in my opinion. Use decimal like use strict. Use decimal like use strict.
Brendan said that we tried that and it's hard. Trying it. This man back here.
Can I ask a question for Brendan?
Come up in the middle, Brendan. Because we haven't had enough Brendan Q&A at JSConf. We've got to... in the middle. You swap with Felix. Yeah.
It's the hot seat.
That's That's the swap seed. It's a swap seed.
Node is a lot of fun. I really like it.
All right. So what's your question, sir?
I was wondering whether the success of Node has influenced your thinking about JavaScript at all.
Yes. So Node is like a delicate flower right now. Besides all the competitive dinosaurs dancing around it, there's been this great work to use like CommonJS modules in a way that actually has required do the right thing on the server side and use functional programming well. But every tool has edges you need to smooth out. And so there's more work to do on JavaScript's usability. And when you look at how it's used in Node, it's a bit different from how it's used in the browser. There's some overlap, but looking at Node makes me think more about binary data and even 64-bit ints. It makes me think more about getting rid of the spaghetti monster. The client has swallowed that a long time ago, and it doesn't nest as deep, I think. The logic doesn't chain as deeply. So yeah, it's changed how I think.
Chris wanted to ask a question, but he's tearing to track B, so I got to call him out. Chris. Yo, there he is.
Despite working over there, I heard the previous question. Wanted to follow up on that, so I'm guessing I'm just going to hand it back to you. Why not assign the ownership of the trademark to a nonprofit organization?
So wait. I'm going to let Paul answer that because Paul's worked extensively with Apache. How you holding up there, buddy?
I can't really hear you.
Similar to previous JavaScript libraries like Dojo and other similar ones. I just want to.
Well,
why not
Chris,
follow the path?
mean, to be honest, we want to profit from having Node under our control. Obviously.
Best answer.
Let's just be honest about it. Yes, we want to make money with Node, but we are trying to do it in a way that we put a lot of resources into it. We try to push this forward, and we do it under a very open license. But yeah, at the end of the day, we would like to, we want to have some control over the IP that we develop, what little fragment is left, and yeah.
I just have a very tiny follow-up.
So, to that answer, SitePen seems to do a damn fine job of making a profit while still giving Dojo back out to the Dojo Foundation.
Okay. and 10gen is, and Basho is doing fine with their product, React. Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yes, there has been many discussions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why don't you grab a mic then?
I don't want to be slandered without the opportunity to respond. So the Dojo example is a little bit different, right? Because what we tried was something that was legally very risky, a genericide strategy, wherein the trademark was never registered but was used heavily. And it was explicitly done that way in an attempt to make it so that because of the way trademark law works, that no one else could claim it in the future, right? That the decision was made that people would no longer be able to register their own trademark in opposition to the community, and therefore if the community was big enough, they could sort of like force people out, right? That's a very, very, very risky strategy for any organization to make, and I completely understand and support any reasonable set of lawyers sitting down in a room and going, no.
So I just want to follow up really quick. When the trademark went over to Joyent, mostly nobody really had a big problem with it, and that's both because Joyent hasn't done anything to deserve any ill will. They've done a great job. Everybody's pretty happy with them. But also because the MIT license protects us from if Oracle buys this company, they can do something bad. And I think none of us have a problem with the ownership of the trademark being at joint. I think we all just want to see something that says, if Oracle buys this company, then we're all not all screwed, right? For all the same reasons that you said that you like the MIT license, I think that we want to see something similar.
I mean, just another thing. This is not a conference for a logo, right? This is a conference about a piece of software. That's why we're here. That's still MIT licensed, and it will be forever.
All right. Felix wants to ask a question. Do you want to be on the panel while you have? I'm just okay.
Yeah. I just want to add one comment to this whole discussion. I perfectly agree that Joint has done a pretty awesome job getting this trademark thing done without causing a huge backlash right away. I think they've done a great job clarifying on the node modules and how that is handled. And I think the main discussion that I've heard in the community, and I've not been directly involved with any of the trademark stuff, is businesses who want to build on Node.js and kind of want to use Node in their name, how that's going to be handled. And this is being figured out right now. And I think if we find a good solution in the community, and there's no reason to believe we won't find that with Joint, I think everybody's going to be pretty happy with the setup. The Oracle thing is also important, but it's important that we fix that or find it out what it really means.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Yeah, we should be clear. The trademark discussion is about the name and companies and products having their name, having Node in their name and appearing to be somehow official. Trademarks are about not confusing, not having confusing naming, and we're trying hard to act appropriately and not totally walk over the NodeConf organization and NodeJitsu and Nodester and several other people who have Node in the name of their products or companies.
I mean, I thought Paul was just
I do want to say, I mean, I'm involved a lot with Apache and the foundation there, and I believe things like IP and CLAs, and it's all like a continuum. There's like projects that do nothing, and that I believe that's a bad thing. So I believe, yes, having it being controlled by an open source foundation of some kind is like the best place for these things to be. But by the same token, I'd much rather have Joint publish a policy, collect CLAs, do all these things, because it is good for the community as a whole in the long run. I think the best solution is a foundation, but it's still good to have someone doing all these things. So I'm happy that Joint's doing it, I guess.
I just realized that the results here actually page over, so there are like 8 more questions in here that I didn't even see. Yeah, there's one that's an empty string with a dot in it. Fuck you, man. What do you hate about Node? Ryan.
Callbacks. Really, the fucking async stuff.
We need some coroutines.
Debugging hurts really bad right now. It hurts bad, and we need more tools around that. Just realizing today that like post-mortem debugging is something that absolutely has to happen. Like we need to be able to take a core dump, walk over it, look at objects, and see what is going on. Also, something that was touched on during Brendan's talk about Spider Node, we have problems pushing strings in and out of, pushing data in and out of V8. So often we'll read data from a socket into a buffer, and that buffer can, without any overhead, go into V8 and be passed around. That's fine. The problem is that often those buffers get turned into strings, and that conversion is really expensive. So the problem is that you tend to have this action where you read something from the kernel, write it into your buffer, then you pull it into V8, and then you turn it into a string, do stuff with it, and then you need to push it out the other end. And so you write it again to a buffer, also expensive. Then you write it down to the socket. And it's clear to me, at least, that in the optimal future, we will be able to take a socket, write data directly into the V8 heap, and present that to the user as a string object, because I think that's basically what people want. And then you know, set encodings and stuff aside. I mean, who cares? Like ASCII data, that would just be fine.
I mean, buffers are a hack, right? Like,
microphone.
Buffers are kind of a hack, right? I mean, they're way faster, but they're way faster because you give up all sorts of things that you really like. I mean, originally Node had this this concept of a binary string, which was just just use the low 7 bits of each character or whatever to encode data, and it worked really well, but it was slow because of all this copying in and out. And then buffers are great for binary data. They're pretty good for all this socket stuff if you're just passing bytes around, but you don't want that. I mean, most of the time, your HTML is not a stream of random, opaque bytes. It's an actual string, and you want to compare characters and do stuff with it. That's my least favorite thing in Node. No, he likes everything.
I do like everything. It's interesting how what the edge is between what works well JavaScript in a browser and what kind of JavaScript works well on a server. Like, you don't have a very fast Node program if you have a 1 gigabyte heap. The garbage collection takes forever. Like, you might think, oh, I'll just write a version of Redis in Node itself, like because JavaScript is so fast. But like, you can't have large heaps. Like, you don't so much need them in the browser. But it'd be kind of handy to have on the server for like all sorts of things. There are a lot of edges like that. Like, you can see why it doesn't work that well for Node, because you don't need it in the browser. I mean, I still think we're better off because there are competing implementations of JavaScript because of the browser that they'll just keep making Node better. But like, a lot of times it'd be really nice to have more than a gigabyte of data under the heap managed by JavaScript.
Okay. This one was submitted by Anonymous, which means Alex Sexton. What are your top 10 favorite Celine Dion songs? Titanic theme doesn't count.
Well, I mean, if the Titanic theme doesn't count, like,
Okay, this one's by Visnu. If you were a sea creature, which one would it be?
Obviously, we have nothing better to talk about.
There were like 2 talks about turtles, man. Okay. You guys can just talk for a second.
Okay, so I'm learning more. To my list, including 64-bit numbers and binary data, which is coming soon, some better string scatter-gather or page-flipping mechanism. But I don't know exactly how you want it to work, so maybe you could say more. I know you get short writes on sockets, and you have to write again. What would the ideal API look like if it's not buffer, but it has all the string goodness from JavaScript?